I don't know if you know this, but just a couple of months ago, Malawi had their currency devalued overnight by 40%. So you can imagine you're earning probably a salary of $100, and then that has been devalued by 40%. No explanations, nothing, right? Whether you have saved or whatever, no explanation. So I feel for African, Bitcoin is truly a tool that can help us, grow and grow our wealth as well, and be at a point where we get our freedom back. Because I normally say the fight is not against a certain race or a certain gender, right? The fight is against the system, a system that has ensured that we stick or we are kept in that loop of poverty generation after generation. Because the moment you try to raise your head, you're dealing with devaluation, you're dealing with inflation, you're dealing with banks freezing your assets, you're dealing with high taxes. You understand? So the economy cannot grow at all. But with Bitcoin, this is different.
I'm Charles.
Okay.
Africa Tech Radio. We could start with introducing yourself and what you do.
Okay. So my name is Marcel Lorraine, and I'm the founder of Bitcoin Dada. So essentially what Bitcoin Dada is, it's a non-profit initiative or organization that focuses on empowering the African female through financial education, and we leverage on Bitcoin to do this.
Okay. What inspired you to transition from events planning to Bitcoin?
Okay, so good question. I think a series of events from my childhood to my college life, but the main thing was as I left my, my working era, which only lasted like about a month. And then I decided, okay, being employed is not my thing. So I went back to school and did events management, right? And then started my own company called Lorraine Events. So where we consulted for both corporate and social events.
Okay.
And it was when I was trying to grow the business that it hit me hard that I did not have access to formal networks, credits. If you don't have property, then it's hard to get like loans from the banks because you don't have security. So that was like a really hard blow to me. And over the years, like for the few years that I'd been working on my business, I was looking for a way out of this loop. You're hardworking, but you have nothing to show for, right?
Mm-hmm. And
it's how the economy, it's how the system is. And most Africans are actually stuck in this loop, right? So by chance and fate, a friend of mine connected me to a company that were coming to introduce an crypto exchange in Kenya. So that was in around 2017, 2018. So during that period, we had a lot of ICOs going on, crypto tokens, all types of shit coins that you can think of. So for me, when I heard about decentralized finance, it was pretty exciting. And I thought to myself, this is it. Yeah. This can take me out of, this devaluation, inflation that I'm facing, and I decided to get in. So unfortunately, I did not have someone to guide me. So I got into this shit casino, as we call it, where I invested money and my time into projects that wasted my time and money. But then again, also, I did make some money. There's also that confession as well. But it was the uncertainty. One day you have money, the next you've lost it. Also, it was mostly like I'm gambling, right? So during the COVID-19 period, I decided to focus on Bitcoin because Bitcoin is the mother currency of all the cryptocurrencies, right? So, and I felt like I didn't have the bandwidth to understand every cryptocurrency because every day, anyone can actually come with their own token, right? So I felt like I cannot read everything and understand everything, but I can try and just focus on one and choose this path. Yeah. So that's what I did during the COVID-19 period. And after COVID-19, again, by luck, chance and fate, and I feel like the universe really wanted pushed me to this direction.
Yes.
Because immediately after the world opened up, a friend of mine, Ike, told me, you know what, we have Bitcoiners coming in to, now these are the maxes, the toxic maxes coming into Kenya, and they want someone to organize a small, intimate, sort of like meetup for them. So like, okay, fine. This is something cool. These are Bitcoiners. I've been learning about Bitcoin, and also it's a way of making money out, of what COVID-19 had done to us. So I actually went to this event, and I think there were about 30 of us with only 2 females.
Mm.
And remember, I didn't go there as a Bitcoiner. I was an event planner.
So technically, it was just one.
Exactly. No. I'm not yet done. So the other female was there because the partner was there. And I think they had some other issues. So they're like, tag along, and then later on we can go. So technically, there were no females in that event.
Yes.
And I asked myself, after the event and learning and, networking with these people, I asked myself, where is the African female on this table? It doesn't make sense. And for me, having a lot of, half of the population of Africa is comprised of the female, right? And if we are to change the narrative of our economies in Africa, then we have to have everybody on board, willing to do something about it. So that's when the idea of having a community where females can come, share about their challenges and learn about this new technology and see how we can better our communities, not just our individual lives, but our communities started. So Dada means sisters in Swahili. So essentially, it's a community of women just trying to build themselves and the communities around them, leveraging on Bitcoin.
Lovely. Now I learned something today. Dada means sister.
Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges African women face in accessing and understanding cryptocurrency, and how has your program helped address this?
Okay. So I would say this. So Bitcoin Dada is completely Bitcoin only program. So we don't focus on cryptocurrencies. And then I would also say, because Bitcoin is completely decentralized, I don't think there's any female who has a challenge in accessing it. But we do have problems in accessing the opportunities that are in the Bitcoin ecosystem and actually trying to learn and understand about how Bitcoin works, right? So, and this stems from the stereotype and the conscious bias that have been ingrained into us from childhood.
Yeah.
Finance is a topic for the men. Engineering, technology is for men, right? So even if you have the capability, I've seen a lot of women still struggling to take the positions or own their room when they're in tech spaces.
Yeah.
So what we've done with Bitcoin Dada is sort of so we have our online education program. We try to mentor them, to give them confidence and encourage them to actually see the value that they can bring into this ecosystem.
Okay.
So not just in the Bitcoin ecosystem as well, but also rather the tech space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. If I may ask you to share any personal success story that Bitcoin Dada has experienced.
Okay.
Yes, just share any of the impact you made, any of the success story. Yes.
Okay. So first of all, Bitcoin Dada itself is a success story because I started with about 20 females in a small WhatsApp group. So they were just friends of my friends. And currently we have expanded to 11 different African countries, which is a huge deal. And this has been in a span of just 2 years, right? So this shows that there's the need for educational programs for Africans, right? But however, if I can narrow down to probably 2 or 3 individuals in the space in my community, I will talk about a female called Sabina Waidera. She was part of the third cohort, if I remember correctly. She's currently running the content creation. She's the content manager at Bitcoin Dada. And yeah, other than that, so I think 2 months back, she blew our mind when she came up with the idea of spending Bitcoin in Kenya without necessarily having to sign up on exchanges and all that, all those hurdles that comes with spending your Bitcoin, because that's the major challenge. You're talking to somebody about earning in Bitcoin, but what happens when it comes to spending it, right? Not many vendors receive Bitcoin. So she's come up with this idea of how to spend your Bitcoin without necessarily having to go through all that trouble, whether you understand what Bitcoin is or you don't understand what Bitcoin is. So the app is called Tando. You can follow them on Twitter as well. Tando, the platform Tando, the website Tando. So that's one. Another one that I would say is close to my heart is a Nigerian female. She's called Halima Abba. She was part of cohort 5. And what she did was she got an opportunity to run a TV series in Nigeria. I think it's called Tozali. Tozali, if I'm not wrong. And she runs a Bitcoin educational programs in Hausa, which is very important because Hausa is, I think, widely spoken in West Africa.
Yeah.
And then the other thing why I say it's important is because we need to understand certain technology like Bitcoin from the point of view of our local understanding.
Yeah.
And not the white man's language.
Exactly. Yeah.
To allow everybody from the grassroots level to understand why this technology is important to us as Africans.
Yeah.
So those are two. But I can continue. I can go on if you want me to.
So I think just hearing those two stories have given me enough confidence about Bitcoin Dada.
Yeah.
So what are your plans for scaling Bitcoin Dada in future?
Okay, so what we are trying to do, or what we are doing, is actually having decentralized communities. We call it mentoring the already mentored females. So, for example, we have leaders in Uganda, Nigeria, South Africa, Namibia, and how we do it is by mentoring leaders, as opposed to having one headquarter or one leader who is Marcel. So we have a replication of what we are doing in these other countries. And this is important because from the perception of these leaders, they understand the challenges that particular country faces and their community faces. So it's very crucial to them that they use Bitcoin or this new technology as per how they deem it fit. Because the challenges that Nigerians face are not necessarily the same challenges that we Kenyans face.
Yeah.
Kenyans can use Bitcoin as a means of just savings, speculation if they want to. Nigerians have other problems like devaluation, currency devaluation and all that.
They also hedge their currency.
Exactly. So they might even use it more in terms of remittances or just sending value across. Yeah.
Okay. So what advice would you give to African women who are beginning to explore Bitcoin?
Okay, so this is from experience. Learn. Learn before you earn. Learn. Find yourself communities as like Bitcoin Dada. It doesn't even have to be completely for women. There's so many communities out there that, try and educate people about Bitcoin. There's so much information online, YouTube and all that. We have programs like Michael Saylor that you can actually, they're accredited, they're credible. You can go online and learn at your own pace. So first learn, that's the first thing, learn. And then the other thing is be confident. As much as there's a lot of jargons around Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, that's just, I normally say that's just a way of men of making just life hard for everybody else. It's not as hard as it seems, right? It's not as hard it seems. Take small steps and build on that, right? And the other thing is you can contribute into this space in whatever capacity. You don't have to be technically inclined, or you can be technically inclined if you want to.
Yeah.
So whatever capacity, you can be a developer, an educator, a creator, an artist, a lawyer, policy maker, whatever capacity that you want, and even just an investor. There's no harm in buying BTC and just deciding to wait for it to speculate, whatever you want. But the first thing is to learn before you think of earning in the space.
Okay. There's a lot of controversy, right? Around if there's a general adoption of Bitcoin, what happens to local African currencies that are not based on the dollar?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I, for one, think the only country that can sustain Bitcoin adoption is the US, right? Because they trade in the dollars, right? What's your opinion about that?
I think from your point of argument is completely because currently we are actually basing the value of Bitcoin on dollars. So that's why you feel that it can only be adopted by, fully adopted by the US, but that's not the case. One Bitcoin in Kenya is one Bitcoin in the States. So that should not change anything. So if we were all African countries, we were all to adopt Bitcoin, it would actually be even way better for us. In that, my value will not be devalued because the US dollar has gone down. Right? So if I'm trading with a Nigerian, it will even be easier. One, because I'll send the exact value without having to change my money into the US dollar and then them to go and actually change it. You see, there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of things that you need to do in between for you to actually send the value. It's expensive, it's slow, it's tiresome, and sometimes you don't even get it, right? So if we all adopt, it's like the dream that, what's his name? This guy who died, who had the dream of having a gold currency, backed gold currency. Gaddafi. No, Gaddafi. Yeah. So it's the same thing. Adopting one currency for all African countries is actually to our benefit than depending on a foreign currency. Yeah.
Now, there's also a lot of security concerns. There's kidnapping in Nigeria. There is a lot of siphoning money from the government, and then these people move it to cryptocurrency, and you really can't trace it or find it anymore. How do you think Africa should approach that from a security standpoint?
I think first, let me just say, when you look at maybe fraud that has happened in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin as compared to fraud or money laundering that has happened in the fiat currency, actually the percentage in the fiat world is more than the crypto world.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. There'll always be a bad side of everything. So you cannot base your judgment on the negative side. Criminals will use Bitcoin, right, to do whatever they want to use, politicians and all that, the same way they use the fiat currency. So if it's up to us to try as much as possible, we, the ones who use Bitcoin in the right way, to continue and showing other people to use Bitcoin to the benefit of us as Africans, as opposed to looking at it from the criminal standpoint of view, because other countries have started adopting Bitcoin, like El Salvador, and you can see the changes, the ripple effect, not just in the economy, not just in the usage of Bitcoin, but you can see the job opportunities, security has increased in the country. They have tourism sectors just going up because of this. So if we focus on the negative side of who is going to use Bitcoin the right or the wrong way, then we actually at a point where we're going to lose. But if we focus on the positive side of, we'll be able to transfer value fast, we'll be able to make remittances and all that, then we have more benefits as opposed to some few criminals using Bitcoin how they want it to be used.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Do you genuinely think Bitcoin is a valuable tool for financial stability in Africa?
Good question. Good question. Honestly, I do think it is. First of all, like I said, Bitcoin is completely decentralized, meaning no one controls it. So we are able to hedge ourselves and wealth against inflation. We are able to bypass things like devaluation. I don't know if you know this, but just a couple of months ago, Malawi had their currency devalued overnight by 40%. So you can imagine you're earning probably a salary of $100, and then that has been devalued by 40%. No explanations, nothing, right? Whether you have saved or whatever, no explanation. So I feel for African, Bitcoin is truly a tool that can help us, grow and grow our wealth as well, and be at a point where we get our freedom back. Because I normally say the fight is not against a certain race or a certain gender, right? The fight is against the system, a system that has ensured that we stick or we are kept in that loop of poverty generation after generation. Because the moment you try to raise your head, you're dealing with devaluation, you're dealing with inflation, you're dealing with banks freezing your assets, you're dealing with high taxes. You understand? So the economy cannot grow at all. But with Bitcoin, this is different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you just touched another sensitive topic. The Kenyan government recently said, should I go there?
I am not sure, but bring it on.
So the Kenyan government recently said they were going to tax cryptocurrency assets, right?
Yes.
Like Bitcoin, right?
Yes.
Considering the current VAT in Kenya is about 17%,
Yes.
right? How do you think that would work?
Um,
First, do you think Bitcoin should be taxed?
Okay, so it beats the purpose of Bitcoin being decentralized, because how can you tax something that you have no control over? That's the thing. I feel the only way that they can tax cryptocurrencies as a whole is by taxing the platforms that people use to on-ramp or off-ramp. So for example, and I'm not saying they should tax Binance, but because at the end of the day, it will go back to us. But the only way they can be able to do this is by taxing platforms such as Binance or Coinbase and all that. That's the only way they can manage, because now that's a centralized platform. But when it comes to individuals, that might be a bit hard, because if you have Bitcoin, I don't know how much Bitcoin you have currently, right? That's in case you have. And it doesn't show that, Charles has Bitcoin here. So this is the much amount of money that we should be taxing him. Taxing Bitcoin, for me, beats the point of actually having a decentralized currency. And it's going to be a bit hard unless they actually go for the centralized platforms that enable people to buy and sell cryptocurrencies. I feel that that's the only way that they can actually tax cryptocurrency.
Okay, so I actually did my blockchain technology program at MIT.
Okay, good.
And one of the biggest issue we were tasked to solve is the issue, and this was before FTX happened, the FTX crash happened. Bitcoin is supposed to be decentralized.
Yes.
Binance and FTX and Coinbase have come to centralize it.
Yeah.
Does that not be the essence of it?
So that's the thing. However, I would say that is not a Bitcoin problem. That's a human problem. Why? We have grown into a society where we believe in centralization, like someone else has to take care of our finances. We sleep better knowing that.
At the bank mindset.
Exactly. Somebody else takes the risk on our behalf. So that's why platforms such as FTX, Binance, Coinbase are actually thriving, because for most people, it's very hard to decide, I'm going to keep my Bitcoin in a hardware wallet, or, just have my own keys, because people still have that bank mindset. Let somebody else take that risk. So the only way we can actually solve it by educating and creating more awareness of you owning your own keys, you taking care of owning your own finances, other than giving it to platforms such as Binance, because at the end of the day, when they go down, you have no one to blame.
Yeah.
You were told from the onset that Satoshi the main purpose that Satoshi created Bitcoin was to have a peer-to-peer currency. Yes, decentralized. But you go ahead and give your money to these central platforms. So whose fault is that? But then I would say to some degree, we still need them, because how do you then buy BTC?
Yeah.
In a world that we're not at the level of hyper Bitcoinization? Then I will throw in caution that as much as we use these centralized platforms, always ensure that you do not leave your assets in such platforms. Always store them in a place where if something happens, if Binance was to shut down, if they were to just decide we're going to scam people or whatever, then you'll be, I'm not saying Binance is going to scam, but you'll be on the safer side. So use it for your peer-to-peer, unwrapping, on off-ramping, because at the end of the day, you need to pay your rent in your fiat currency.
Yeah.
But do not store your wealth on these platforms, central platforms.
If there is ever a general adoption of Bitcoin in Africa, it means you would need to bring in the government.
Yes.
Right? How would that work?
Okay, so this is the thing. The majority of adoption have always started from the grassroots level. There's something, there's a law that goes by, good money drives out bad money. And this has been seen from earlier civilization, where barter trade wasn't working for people, and they decide, okay, we need to start, for smaller groups, we need to start probably using shells and all that. So however much the government might not want to be involved, if the grassroots levels come to a certain where they cannot ignore them, then they would have to say, okay, fine, there is this asset. How can we be part of it? And this is the reason why we're seeing things like Bitcoin ETFs coming up, because companies, institutions are saying we can no longer assume this particular currency or asset. We need to be part of it somehow, whether it's using Bitcoin ETFs, whether it's actually holding Bitcoin itself, they need to be part of it. And my advice to anybody out there, including governments, is start learning about Bitcoin. There's no, you have nothing to lose by learning and understanding how Bitcoin works and understanding how it can help your country as a whole. Look at, we are lucky at this point that we have countries like El Salvador that we can, compare and say, okay, fine, this has happened in El Salvador because they adopted Bitcoin. We can look at Bitcoin ETFs and say, what are the advantages of having Bitcoin ETFs?
Okay.
Start from somewhere and not just completely ignore it. And that's the problem with Africans and African governments.
Okay.
We tend to ignore things until the last minute, and then we become the consumers. And Bitcoin has given us like a leveled playing field for all. It does not equalize us to the Westerners. It would be wrong to say that, but it has given us a level playing field where we can start from whatever point we want to. Because at the end of the day, you can buy BTC from as low as $1. So you have no excuse.
Yeah.
You have no excuse. Even as a government, you can't say we cannot afford to buy one Bitcoin every day like El Salvador. You can buy from as low as $1 a day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there has been a lot of conversations around African countries adopting a central currency.
Yeah.
Do you think that would ever happen?
So like one common currency for Africa.
Do you think it's the faster route? Really?
I won't say no or yes, because this has to come from the citizens themselves. We have to start from somewhere. And the reason why I am excited about Bitcoin and Bitcoiners is because the majority of Bitcoiners are starting within their own community, right? They say the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? So we are seeing educators, developers coming in with solutions that are meant or catered, customized for the African challenges, right? So that's where we start from. And then from then we can think of what happens what will happen in the next 10 years if we continue with the same trajectory or the same momentum? If we continue building applications for Africans by Africans, the next 10 years, 20 years, it will definitely be a different story. If we continue having Bitcoin datas, across countries, what will happen in the next 10? Definitely it will not be the same as right now, right? So definitely it's not a yes or no answer, but I can say I am hopeful seeing that what is being done in this space and having conferences such as African Bitcoin Conference every year cements the credibility of what Bitcoiners and what Bitcoin is and the value it brings to us as Africans. And I would implore and advise, especially Kenyans or any African, if you're available in December from the 9th to 11th, please attend the African Bitcoin Conference. Come and learn, meet some of the Bitcoiners, network, see what partnerships. You don't even have to be a Bitcoiner. See what partnerships that you can get from these people, right? Because institutions have started adopting Bitcoin and you want your company to be among the first.
Yes.
Right? So purchase your tickets. There's a 20% sale on the tickets right now. So
lovely.
Sooner the better. African Bitcoin Conference, it will be at the prestigious JW Marriott.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Hopefully you give us some of those tickets. And then we should help you promote it also.
Who knows? We can definitely talk about that.
Finally, the Bitcoin technology is not an African technology, right?
Okay.
Is it not a function of changing slave masters? Because one of the things that African presidents, for example, Ruto, have been pushing for at the world stage is to change the current financial system that is currently focused on the Western economies. Bitcoin is also focused or by the Western economies, so to speak, right? Adopting Bitcoin, it's still not truly African. Is it not a function of changing slave masters?
Okay, so I will not speak about what the president is doing or not doing. I have a different opinion as a Kenyan, and I don't want to, disappear. So I will leave that.
Okay, that's fine.
I will speak about Bitcoin and it being changing slave masters. And I feel you. I actually do feel you because the representation that we're seeing in the Bitcoin ecosystem is the majority are Westerners, right? And that goes back to what I say. Bitcoin does not equalize us with the Westerners, but it gives us a level playing field where we can say, okay, fine, the West, the states do not, sorry about that, the state do not, they do not own Bitcoin. But the only difference is if they actually decide to buy in chunks and in holds, to some point they will have some sort of control. But we can, we can beat that by saying, having a mentality of fine, okay, the states are also involved, the Western countries are involved, but we can also be involved. So it's not really like a Western thing. It's a platform for all. And I feel when Satoshi, that is the one thing or the one gift that Satoshi gave to everybody, whether it's gender, race, geographical location. It's one thing he sat down and decided, okay, fine, the current fiat system or monetary system, sort of like benefits the few. And even not just Westerners, like even the West, they have a lot of problems. Look at the homeless people. There's something that we pride ourselves in Africa is not having as much homeless people as the West. Yeah. So we can't say we are that badly off. So they have their own problems here. So I feel Satoshi really thought about who Bitcoin will be for. And he said, this is going to be an open source platform. Whoever wants to come in, well and good, it will benefit them, right? So it's not really like a Western thing, but we can make it a Western thing by just sitting back and looking at and complaining. Why are the Westerners investing more than us? Start investing, start buying.
Yes.
start buying your BTC right now, right?
Finally, do you think Satoshi is a myth created by the US government?
I want to be biased and say I feel Satoshi is a female.
Lies! Well, I haven't heard that before, but I'm excited.
Because men create all the problems and then we have to fix them.
Oh, nice. Well answered. Well answered.
Don't you agree?
I totally agree to the point.
Exactly. Men create the problem and women have to fix it. So Satoshi is definitely a female. But anyway, so nobody really knows who Satoshi is. So I don't want to assume that, it's a myth created by the US. Could be, could not be. But at the end of the day, what are you doing about it? Are you waiting for the next 10 years to actually discover that, it was a myth with the US, or it was even Marcel or Satoshi Nakamoto and pretending?
Mm-hmm.
What I normally tell my students is, don't be your grandfather or your grandmother who did not purchase land when other exactly. So, you're like, when other people have lands and inheritance and trusts, you're like, wow, my great grandfathers and grandmother, start now. Be that ancestor who actually decided this is a new technology, it's working, and I'm going to get into it regardless. I don't want to think about assume the worst, because what we are doing is actually assuming the worst. Why not focus on the positive side of it? Why not focus on the fact that it can change our lives as individuals and our economies as countries?
Thank you very much, Marcel.
You're welcome.
Marcel is founder of Bitcoin Dada.
Yeah.
You've done a very great job. It's really not easy as an entrepreneur to take on the things that other people do not want to take on.
Exactly.
And when I see African entrepreneurs making those decisions, I really, really, really love it. Thank you very much. We hope you get all of the support.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.